Hi, this is Dan Sussman, back with part 2 of my presentation on compare and contrast paragraphs. Now, if you watched part 1, you know that most of what I discussed there concerned the pre-writing that goes into compare and contrast writing. That's where you sit down, figure out what you're going to write about, what two or more subjects you're going to write about, the comparisons between them, and the contrasts between them. And I discussed the ways you can map that out. And as an example, I used the comparisons and contrasts between a fine porcelain teacup and a plain old paper cup that you might get from a Starbucks or some other coffee bar. We're going to come back to that example and discuss how you actually arrange your writing about those two objects. There are basically two methods of structuring supporting sentences in a compare and contrast paragraph. The first one is known as block method. The second one is known as point-by-point method. Each of them works well with certain kinds of compare and contrast compositions. I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm going to focus on actually teaching you the structures themselves so that when an instructor says to you, write it in block method or write your paragraph or composition in point-by-point method, you'll know what he or she is talking about. So in block method, we start out, or at least I have my students start out, by introducing a paragraph by briefly comparing the two subjects. And in my example, we're going to keep that very short. Only one or two comparisons. We'll be through it in a sentence. We're going to devote most of the attention to the contrasts. After we've done the comparison, we get into saying how the two objects are different. In block method, we take our first object or subject that we are going to contrast, let's say in this case the porcelain teacup, and we provide all of the points of contrast about it. In other words, we write a whole block of text about that one object. Then we focus on the second object or subject and provide all the points of contrast about it, such as the paper cup. And then finally, we wrap it all up with a conclusion. Let's take a look at how that might look arranged in an organizer. So if we take subject 1, the porcelain cup, three things we might say about it is very often they're works of art, they're delicate, and they can be very valuable. And I'll write several sentences about that, staying focused on the porcelain cup. At that point, I will start writing about the paper cup and say, in contrast, it's plain, it can be sturdy, and it's very disposable. We just get rid of it. So then I've written a whole block of copy about the paper cup. So let's see what that actually looks like on paper. So I start off with a topic sentence. Hot drinks, such as coffee and tea, usually are served in cups, but there's a great deal of difference between the types of containers you'll sip your drink from. Okay, so far so good. Now I'll move into a sentence in which I can provide at least one comparison between them. I say, for example, china cups and paper cups from a coffee bar. Both will hold your hot beverage without any problems. If you want to, you can write about other comparisons. Often they both have handles on them. They can hold hot drinks or cold drinks. I limited myself to one comparison here. Now I start getting into the contrasts, and I lead in with a transition sentence. I say, however, that's where the similarities between them end. That's the sentence in blue there. Now we're down to the block of copy I have in red, and I said that in block format, I'm going to start talking about one object and stay on it until I discuss all of the qualities about that. So I say, fine china cups often are works of art featuring beautiful designs and colors. They often are valuable, worth a significant amount of money. I should have a period there. They often have sentimental value as well, as many are keepsakes handed down from generation to generation. Okay, that's everything about the China cup. Now I move on to talking about my second object, the paper cup. Paper cups, however, are plain, undecorated containers. They're just intended to do a job. They're worth only a few cents each, and we usually throw them away or recycle them when we're done using them. So, I've talked about the same qualities. I've contrasted those qualities about the paper cup to those in the fine china cup. And then I finish off with a concluding sentence. Whether we use fine china or paper for our morning drinks, for many of us, the quality of the beverage inside them is more important than the quality of the cup itself. So, that is block method writing for the compare-contrast paragraph. Now we're going to go into point-by-point method. In a point-by-point method, we start the same way. We have a topic sentence, we have a sentence or two of comparisons, and then maybe a transition sentence. Then we focus on the first, not the first object, the first quality, such as the artistic side of the object, and we talk about how beautiful or decorated the porcelain cup is versus the paper cup. Then we move on to the second quality, such as value, and contrast the two there, back and forth, back and forth. Third, maybe there's a third quality we're contrasting. We talk about that, and then we wrap the whole thing up with our conclusion. So, if we were to write it on an organizer, it would look like this. Quality, quality, quality. Those are the boxes in blue. Artistic quality, strength, value. And we talk about each of the objects in a sentence that refers to artistic, strength, and value. So it's easier to see than it is to explain. Here's what the paragraph that we just did before would look like in point-by-point format. Now, the first three sentences are exactly the same as we had in block format. I start off with a topic sentence. I move into a comparison and then a transition sentence. Those are my first three sentences. But look at the way we handle the supporting sentences for the contrast. I start off talking about how beautiful both objects are. Fine china cups often are works of art featuring beautiful designs and colors. Okay, then I talk about the same quality with paper cups. Paper cups, however, are plain undecorated containers. They're just intended to do a job. Back to china cups, and we're going to talk about value. China cups are often valuable, worth a significant amount of money. And then over to china cups, same thing. On the other hand, paper cups are worth only a few cents each. Now, down to how disposable they are, or whether people hold on to them. China cups have sentimental value as well, as many are keepsakes handed down from generation to generation. And then the paper cups. But paper cups are worth only a few pennies, and we usually throw them away or recycle them when we're done using them. And again, a concluding sentence.